Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Tewan Jabela, your host. Let's quickly look at the front page of today's Namibian Sun. In this segment of the show tonight, I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of Namibia Media Holdings, Albe Botha. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Yeah, it's funny enough, it's the first time I'm on the show, so thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, very honored. Albe, you've been at the center of a very exciting evolution of how news is shared at this company over the past couple of years. But today you are here to talk to us about Namibia Media Hub. What is it? What is this, and what does it entail?
So, Twebu, I think to be fair, you know, we've been involved with this process of engaging on social media through daily shows for close to a year now. Yeah. Evening Reviews about 2 months old.
Yes.
Through COVID-19, we've been extensively extending our coverage on a daily basis, and we've realized a couple of things. Firstly, our audience are very appreciative of what we've been able to do. Yes. In terms of sharing the message. Mm-hmm. And secondly, we've seen how powerful this medium is. You know something, but we know it now really. Yeah. And out of this, we've realized that we have to extend our service delivery. So by the end of June this year, we would like to have a 24-hour engagement on our social media platforms. Sure. Nothing will change that. Like, for instance, Evening Review will still be broadcasted on the Namibian Sun. Yeah. But at the same time, on the Network Media Hub, we will share it on our Facebook page called Network Media Hub. It's there already if people want to go and see. Yeah. And of course on networkmediahub.com, which is a website. Yes. And out of this, if you stay on that Facebook page, you will be able to 24 hours see our productions. Mm. What's very nice and interesting is that if something is live that moment, you can watch it. Yes. If you believe that this is not quite what I want to watch, you can just scroll down just a bit, not 3 pages or 5 pages down, and say, okay, this is a show I rather want to watch. So you know all our shows are together in one place. Yes. The challenge currently with Facebook, like we all know, is that if you didn't watch me right now and you want to come back tomorrow morning, then you've got to scroll and scroll and scroll because we've got so much other news as well. Yeah. And then sometimes you miss it. Now everything is in one place. Mm-hmm. So we're not changing anything what we're doing. So if you want to follow us on the Sun still, you're more than welcome to. But if you go to Network Media Hub, the Facebook page, or networkmediahub.com on the websites, everything is there together. Uh-huh. So currently we have about 5 shows running. Yes. We need to extend that to about 15. Yeah. And we were doing that over the next 3-4 months. So that by end of June, we will have a complete program for 24 hours. You'll be able to watch on social media. Mm-hmm. We'll be able to entertain people with news, entertainment, and music, of course. Yeah.
And how is in terms of conveniences, the convenience for the consumers of all this news and information that we are putting out in terms of gadgets? How convenient will it be?
Well, I think people have really grown to their phones. Yeah. So of course your phone is at the fingertips, and at any point in time you want to go there, you can just go there and you'll see the show. So it's as simple as understanding how Facebook works, which you all do. Yeah. But if you do go to our networkmediahub.com as well, you also see that we've packaged not just today's show, but all the Evening Review shows. So it's a bit like Netflix or some other entertainment apps that are out there. It is very, very convenient if you want to not just see tonight's show or yesterday's show, but say last month's show.
Yeah.
And it's already there. You can go there already now.
Yeah.
So I think the convenience is wonderful. I think what's also nice about social media is it's a two-way channel. We see that every night with your show.
Yes.
And that is that it's not just what we tell you and what we think is right or wrong, but you tell us.
Yes.
And we react to that. So that we're now becoming this multi-channel engagement, not a single channel engagement. And I think that's why people really enjoy what we're doing, is that unlike television or radio, even print media, it's a two-way channel. And I think that discussion that we're creating through social media is why we're so successful.
Indeed. Albe, while you are still here, I just explain to our viewers the approach and the passion that we've seen from the Namibia Media Holding side in terms of really the role that we are playing in this very critical moment for our country. We have opened up websites now for people to access information as much as possible. We are still distributing our papers countrywide. What is the underlying purpose there?
So you know, it's one thing to say that that there's press freedom in this country, which is true. It's another thing to say that we are an essential service, which is true. But then you have to practice what you preach, and I think that's what we've done. We've sat down and said, okay, if we are there for press freedom and we fight for the right of expression, of freedom of expression, and at the same time we want to make sure everybody reaches our information in this critical time of COVID-19. We had to make sure three things. One is that we continue delivering newspapers to every corner of this country in these difficult times, getting through the gates, I call them. And trust me, it's been quite a challenge for us to get our newspapers through every night, but thanks to the officials, government and ourselves of making it happen. And secondly is making sure that we on a daily basis share our same PDF version on Facebook and on our website, so that if you can't physically get hold of the newspaper because you're locked up or locked down, whatever the right word is, which we appreciate, and please stay at home, don't stop staying at home, then at least you can go at 8 o'clock every morning and read the entire newspapers if you've got it in your hands. But thirdly, what we've done is we've opened our websites for this time as well, so that those of us that like going to a website itself and reading the stories there. And we did this because, yes, it does mean financially that we are contributing towards the country's fight against COVID, but that's what we have to do. So to make sure that everybody gets the messages every day, because there's so much information out there, and a lot of it isn't quite true. It's true, but not quite. And I know we make mistakes as well. We're not there not to make mistakes per se, but we try our level best not to make mistakes. And therefore, when they read us and look at us, they know that we have the truth and we say the truth.
Indeed. The final question from me, Albe, is around we operate in a commercial space, but as NMH, we seem to have taken a step backward and say, look, it's no longer in this critical moment. It's not even about profits and everything like that. There's a lot of things that we are doing at the moment that are actually costing us a lot of resources, but without expecting a return. Is this sort of the contribution that we want to make?
I think in these challenging times that we're living right now, and I must be honest, I don't think it's just NMH that's doing that. I think a lot of organizations in this country are doing that. And if I start mentioning names, some of them are going to phone me and say, why didn't I mention them? So let's not mention names. But as a country, we've realized that COVID-19 has stretched our resources to the utmost. I think in the history of not just of the last 30 years, but of 150 years, 200 years, 400 years, depends on how long you want to define this country. We've never been stretched as much as now. And therefore, when something needs to be done, it has to be done. Because if you're still going to wait for the resources, then the implications of that delay means that so many more people may get infected, which means so much longer it will take to get over the curve, which means much longer the economy will take to recover. So we've taken a view as NMH that when something needs to be done, we do it straight away, whether we use our own resources, whether we use our network of clients that we have, or whether we engage government to influence them accordingly. The time is of the essence, and one thing we can't do with COVID-19 is delay decisions, and sometimes I find that's still a bit challenging, but in general I appreciate the process. And that's why as NMH we've identified areas that we felt we can not just write about it. It's easy to write about things not going right. The question is not so much what's wrong, but how do you fix it, and how do you fix it fast? And we do believe we play a role there.
Definitely. That was Albe Botha, the CEO of Namibia Media Holdings, speaking to us about the latest technologies introduced at the company. We'll be right back after the break.
Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jemima Beaters. I have in studio today the acting SG for NANSO. She's here to talk to us about the lockdown and how it's affecting students in the country. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jemima.
I didn't say that earlier. Her name is Patience Masua. So, Patience, you were this morning. There was this discussion with the at the COVID Communication Center, and a lot of issues were raised about, including the fact that government is going to resume education through online or distance approaches. What do you, as NANSO, make of this?
I think, Jemima, we warmly welcome the approach that was taken by the Ministry of Basic Education. So essentially, in basic education, the school calendar has not been disrupted. So the school calendar was moved up, and only now, when they start, it's going to be an online approach where the executive director said that parents will need to obviously use all mechanisms possible to help their children study at home. The organization, as NANSO, recognizes that not all learners have favorable households that support online studying or that support studying at home in general, because of factors such as parents maybe not having time, parents being part of essential services, and all of those dynamics. There's another dynamic of children surviving off of school feeding programs. And so as the organization, we warmly welcome that intervention by the ministry. Ours is only to ensure that that type of access is not limited to learners who are privileged and learners who are advantaged. What we're saying is that access needs to be across the board.
So NANSO has also issued a statement over the weekend. Yesterday was over the weekend, right? But yeah, so NANSO has issued a statement saying you want to boycott online if it doesn't include everybody. Now then, obviously there's this challenge that some of the so-called privileged students would feel that they are being punished. What do you make of that?
Jemima, boycott is a very strong word. Not boycott, but our position was with regards to institutions of higher learning that have, that expect assessments to be now suddenly submitted online in the midst of us facing these difficult circumstances. What we're saying, Jemima, is that that process needs to be halted so that students can have, mechanisms need to be put in place so that students can have equal access first, and then we proceed with the process. A number of students, yes, have raised the concern of privileged students being disadvantaged because the academic year might be moved, or the academic year might be slightly delayed into holidays, late into December. We don't know what's going to happen. We are obviously going according to the directive of government. What we're saying as the organization is that we're pleading with privileged students to empathize with those students who don't have electricity at their homes, to empathize with those students who don't have laptops, those students who don't have internet connectivity. Some of the students have sent me messages, and they told me that they charge their phones at Shabin's, and the phone is the only smart device that they have access to, because these students stayed in hostels, and the hostel obviously provided on-campus facilities such as computers, laptops, and internet. So all of these things, it's really multifaceted. All of these things are hindering students from having an equal chance. So as we speak, students are failing assessments, not because they're not competent, not because they're not willing, but because they're unable to access those online platforms. So we're saying, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's halt the process. Go back to the drawing board. Look at our data. assess that data and see how many students actually have access to these platforms, how many students, in addition to having access to these platforms, have a stable internet function, and of that number, how many of those students access those platforms via laptops, via computers, and how many do it by mere smartphone. And so you ask yourself, how do you expect a learner to complete an assignment via their smartphone, even though they can access the online facility? Do you see that it's really multifaceted, Jemima? The online approach works as long as there's access, and when students are in hostels, they have that access. Status quo has it so that the circumstances don't allow students to have access. And I think universities need to keep this in mind for a long-term approach as well, to say somewhere we need to transition to a phase where we can have online learning for all students. You know, we shouldn't be facing problems of students not having laptops or not having internet facilities.
So yes, the reality is that around 43% of the students cannot access these online education programs.
Absolutely.
And you've also said that we need to move to a world where learners need to access online education, all of them at the same time.
Yes.
Now, we know that this is not the reality right now. Now, what are the solutions, at least 2 or 3 that you can share with me, that NANSO can provide at this point?
Is this for the crisis that we're currently facing?
For the crisis that they are in right now.
A couple of responses that the organization is committed to make. One is a hotline that we've availed. We recognize that students come from homes that may sometimes be abusive, and where they may fall victim to all sorts of abuse, be it physical, be it emotional. So we have a hotline that is available that students can call, and I'll share this number with you also, that students can call 24 hours a day should they find themselves in a situation where they're abused. We've partnered with, I spoke to the executive director, and they have availed a number of psychosocial support staff. So that's in the form of therapists and psychologists to assist students during this time should they face psychological challenges. Beyond that, we have directly engaged MTC and Telecom. We are engaging them to seek some sort of assistance in the form of data should online learning continue, so that those learners who don't have internet connectivity can have some sort of relief during this time of the lockdown.
In terms of data, but they still won't have devices.
Yes, that is for, remember we've segmented students in various groups. Some may have the infrastructure, but they don't have the internet connectivity. Yeah. So now we're saying for the learners, we also have a student education COVID response package that we're developing in partnership with a couple of teachers and in line with the national curriculum for grades 1 to 3. So we're looking at the most impoverished, most vulnerable communities, and we're identifying, we're busy collecting data, we're busy setting up the package, and that will include worksheets for mathematics, for English, etc., in line with the national structure, to keep the little ones' brains active during this time, and to just serve as not necessarily a replacement for the school curricula.
This is at home. This is when they're at home.
At home.
Keeping in mind that most of the parents are not literate in Namibia.
Absolutely. But what we're saying is we can't sit with our hands folded. So we are trying to support there where we can. And if need be, we can, send out some of our volunteers to go assist. We as the organization have set up a NANSO COVID-19 response team. This is a team that is working 24/7 only on issues affecting students and learners nationwide in terms of COVID-19. And the team is doing brilliantly. It's really an incredible group of student leaders that we have on our team. And that task force is only to deal with the socio-economical aspects and the specifically the challenges that learners and students are facing now that they're forced to be home. So that task force is dedicated to only dealing with the crisis that we're facing now.
Now going back to obviously tertiary students, have you had a discussion or consultations with students to sensitize them that there's a likelihood of this lockdown affecting this lockdown being extended and which may in the end cause them to fail some of their subjects or to have to repeat?
Jemima, you're speaking on a worst case scenario basis.
We must prepare.
But it's very necessary. It's absolutely true what you're saying. Look, before we release any statement as the Namibian National Student Organization, and before we make any decision, we go through countless consultations and consultations and consultations. We did a cost-benefit analysis and we said, look, is it worthwhile to overlook an injustice, to have a minority privileged group proceed and pass at the expense of a majority underprivileged group of students that say in our peri-urban and in our rural areas? And we took a principled stance as the organization to say that this is not a worthwhile sacrifice that we're going to make. So the route that we've taken is a principled stance to say we're going to empathize with our students and we're going to stand in solidarity with them. We want equal access to online learning, and I don't think that amidst a crisis such a bomb can be dropped, not at the sacrifice of our students.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jemima. I appreciate the platform.
And thank you for tuning in.
COVID-19 oshike. Ombuto yo COVID-19 ombuto ome choka haikwata omapunga no minino dhoe dhombepo. Ohayetizo kombuto haithana COVID-19. Omadhidhiliko ongashi omukolo uupyu uli pombanda okuza peepesenda 38 degree, omifudho tadhi pata. Koneka omamaska oganiilonga yuundjolowele naamboka taya ehama nale. Kwashilipaleka kutya uuyelele waza konzo yishi okwiinekelwa. Ino haluka, landa, oolaka moositola tadhi pakelwa iilandomwa ishewe. Omatunilo gokwiigamena kopionomia itaga keelele ombuto yo COVID-19. Ombuto yo COVID-19 ihayi taandelithwa koomwe. Igamena kombuto yo COVID-19. Yoga iikaha yoye alushe wapaleka iikaha yoye niwapalekitho yokoonyala yalongelwa o-alkoholi nenge wiiyoge nothewa nomeya. Yanda omangundumano, kala kokule oshinano shometa yimwe okuza komuntu takolola nenge tateshima. Yanda okwiikwata pomeho, eyulu nokokana. Oonyala ohadhi kwata iinima oyindji nokukwata oombuto. Uuna dha kwata oombuto otadhi vulu okufala oombuto dhoka komeho goye, omayulu nokokana. Nokuza mpono oombuto otayi piti meni lyolutu lwoye nokukwetela uuvu. Kololela teshimina pokatishu nenge pokwaako koye. Sikila okana koye oshowo omayulu goye nokooko koye kwatonywa nenge nokatishu uuna tokolola nenge toteshima. Eto ekelehi okatishu hoka meendelelo. Uuyelele womondjila nomilombo. Omapandja gomakwatathano go-internet ogena omauyelele ogendji kaageshi goshili nkene aantu taya vulu okuhulitha po ombuto ndjoka nenge nkene taya vulu okupanga ombuto yo COVID-19 nomikithi dhoka tadhi vulu okweetitha. Maka otapulandula uukwashili kombinga yomauyelele kageshi goshili. Etaandelo, iifundja. Ombuto ompe yo coronavirus ohayi taandelithwa koomwe nenge koondya dhaaChina. Oshili? Ahawe, ombuto ompe yo coronavirus ohayi taandele okupitila miikunguluki uuna omuntu akwatwa kolola nenge ateshima nenge afudha nenge momayeye oshowo omanino okuza momayulu. Egameno, iifundja. Okwiitula osaline momayulu otashi yandja ekwato COVID-19. Oshili? Ahawe, kapena uumbangi kutya okwiitula osaline momayulu otashi gamene aantu. Opena uumbangi uushona kutya okwiitula osaline momayulu otashi kwathele mokupanga eshikisha. Iifundja. Omapopyo gamwe komapandja gomakwatathano gopa internet otaga ti okwiitula alcohol nenge alkaline kolutu otashi yandja COVID-19 nenge okumwa omeya ogendji otashi yogomo ombuto. Oshili? Kapena uukwashili nomapopyo ngoka. Okukalekapo uuyogoki mwakwatelwa okwiiyoga koonyala nokuyanda omahala gena aantu oyendji otashi kwathele mokushunitha pevi ekwato kombuto. Iifundja. Omipepo dhombepo ompyu otadhi dhipaga ombuto ompe yo coronavirus. Oshili? Ahawe, omipepo dhombepo ompyu itadhi gamene kombuto yo COVID-19. Aluhe wapaleka iikaha yoye niiwapalekithi yokoonyala yalongelwa alcohol nenge wiiyoge nothewa nomeya. Oonyala nadhi kukutithwe niilapi yokwiipushula yayela nenge nomipepo dhokukutika. Iifundja. Onkalo yombepo ontalala nenge ompyu, ondawu, okulya garlic nenge okwiiyoga nomeya omapyu nayo okwa popiwa kutya otayi keelele ombuto. Oshili? Kapena uumbangi kombinga yomapopyo ngoka na kapena uumbangi kutya ombuto yo COVID-19 otayi gumwa konkalo yombepo. Omukalo dhingi okwiigamena okuyoga iikaha yoye aluhe nokuyanda okuya mekwatathano nomuntu wakwatwa kombuto. Pamukalo ngoka oto kuthapo ombuto dhoka dhili koonyala dhoye dhoka tadhi vulu okukukwata uuna wakwatwa omeho goye, okana nenge omayulu. Iifundja. Owapumbwa okuzala emaska moshipala aluhe ngele toyi pondje. Oshili? Ahawe, aantu mboka yena uundjolowele na kayena omadhidhiliko gombuto na inaya monika COVID-19 inaya pumbwa okuzala omamask ongele owala taya sile oshisho omuntu wakwatwa COVID-19. Omamask otaga kwathele owala ngele omuntu ta ehama na owapumbwa okwiikalela nokulongitha pamwe nokwiiyoga koonyala aluhe nokukalekapo uuyogoki. Epango, iifundja. O-antibiotic ohadhi yanda okupanga ombuto ompe yo coronavirus. Oshili? O-antibiotic ohayi longo okupanga ombuto ihe oombakteria owala. Kapena omuti gokupanga COVID-19 ihe mboka yakwatwa otaya vulu okwiihwepopaleka nomiti ngaashi oparacetamol oshowo aspirin.